Hi folks, now as I said, this channel here is for musical education. It's to teach about the beginnings of the genres and all their little subgenres in separate videos, describing how they get started and where the musical theory comes into it, the styles of musical theory and such like. Our first segment is going to be about metal. Heavy metal and where it all began, and the subgenres will be separate videos to that. Probably smaller ones than this one because this is the first one. And where each subgenre started off and what created its feeling. I'm going to be awesome. Yeah, because I'm awesome all the time. And Logic's going to be shite, because he always is. And I'm obviously going to know better because I am fantastico. So I'm going to be using my notes a lot, so if I look at them, don't be surprised, because as most people know, who know me, know I don't do scripts much. I'm a more off the cuff person when it comes to recording videos, so I don't know where to start with heavy metal. The birth, perhaps, and where it first arrived. Now, a lot of people think that Black Sabbath are the first metal band. They're wrong. Sabbath formed in '69, released the first album in '70, and I won't deny that Black Sabbath released the first fully metal album. They did. They released the first heavy metal album that expounded upon so many things, and it's definitive in the genre of metal. But they were not the first metal band. Indeed, they didn't even release the first metal single. The first metal band would be a German band called the Scorpions. Known by many for a single song, Rock You Like a Hurricane, which they released in the 80s. They formed in 1965, and they were metal from the start. More psychedelic rock style metal, but they were there. If you listen to their first album, which I do have here in my notes, the Scorpions, their first album was called Lonesome Crow, one of the few bands of metal in the 70s, and well, in the 70s, that did not self-title. For some reason, self-titling was the thing in the 70s. This album was released in 1972, and it's very, I would say, I can hear a lot of Pink Floyd influence in a couple of singles from when I listen to them. So they were the first metal band to ever form with the purpose of being metal to a degree, or hard rock, which sort of is synonymous with metal in the 70s at the time, early 70s anyway, definitely at the time. So like I said, the first metal album was Black Sabbath, self-titled at Black Sabbath, released in 1970, February 1970, because there's quite a few bands that released what could be almost classed as metal or in 1970 later on, but I won't say that Black Sabbath influenced those albums because it would be hard to say so. But I will say that the first metal album you can count on is Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath. And an interesting side note, the song Black Sabbath in Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath is very possibly the reason why metal is considered devil music, or was considered devil music at the time by mostly religious folk, because it used tritones in its harmonies. Now, to explain that, well, the tritone, well, in heavy metal for harmonic structures, usually they'll employ modal scales like the diatonic scale, which is also called the natural minor scale, and the Phrygian mode. And it's in those chord progressions from it, of metal, usually they'll use tense, something to ramp up the tension, to make a tense or feeling. So they generally use the chromatic or tritonal relationships. And the reason that I'm saying that Sabbath, Black Sabbath is what created the image of devil music being metal is because for, I'd say about a good couple of minutes, they used nothing but tritones for their for most of their harmonal ways until that song really kicks in. I'll listen to it in a bit after I explain. A tritone is it was called Diabolica in Musica by the monks in the medieval times. In fact, it was banned from ecclesiastical singing, you know, religious singing and stuff. It was forbidden because it was so tense and just the way it was discordant. It became associated with evil because of the monks calling it Diabolus in Musica, which means the devil in music. In Western cultures, it became associated with that until about 1900, when it started being used a lot more, but not as much. And then, of course, Black Sabbath came in, and if you're having the first couple of minutes it's all tritone, a lot of people viewed that as evil, and that's where the whole devil thing came from. It's still sort of viewed as giving an evil overtone to music today, and it's pretty much the reason why it's called devil music. And so you can understand, we're going to listen to some Sabbath just now, and I want you to hear some of the titular track of the titular album of the band Black Sabbath. And I want you to listen. When you hear it, you'll hear the tritone. It's it. Dum, 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 dum. When you hear those things, that's your tritone. It's usually the fifth. That's what you hear. So that is why generally metal is called the devil's music. You can all blame Black Sabbath for the persecution over the years. When it comes to harmony as well, heavy metal tends to use a lot of pedal points as a harmonic basis. Now, like I said, Sabbath were not the first metal band, and they definitely did not release the first metal single. In fact, the band that released the first metal single could almost be described as Blue Cheer, who were an American band. They first formed in 1967, and the first album was Vincebus Eruptum in 1968. They were psychedelic rock and merged in with heavy metal, sort of a very influential band for metal in its formative years. I'd advise you to look them up anyway. But their version of Summertime Blues, which was a 54 song by some fella, was possibly the first metal single ever, released in '67. And if you listen to the drums, you can see why that would be. As for the term heavy metal and where it comes from, well, there are several theories about that. Steppenwolf's Born to be Wild, which I believe I noted down somewhere. No, I didn't. I'm sure I did. Oh well. Steppenwolf's Born to be Wild includes a lyric, Heavy Metal Thunder. That is possibly the first use of it in a lyric. And that was released in the 60 something. It was released in the 60s anyway. But the term itself more than likely comes from the beat poet William Burroughs, probably most famous for releasing Naked Lunch, The Offer of Naked Lunch, from his, I think it was Nola trilogy or Nova trilogy, where it introduced the term heavy metal into culture, heavy metal gimmick sort of thing. But also, it's possible that the first use of heavy metal to describe a band would have been for laughs that it creates. It was used in the 60s to describe the Byrds, because the person who used it thought they had a slight aluminium feel to their music at the time. I wouldn't class the Byrds as metal at all, but obviously the person at the time thought it was like that. Ozzy said in a BBC documentary in '89, it was a BBC documentary on arena heavy metal. I'll leave a link to it below because it's quite an interesting documentary to watch. It covers a range of things, not just heavy metal or beginnings heavy metal, but it covers like thrash with early Metallica, and we are talking early Metallica. I mean, Lars Ulrich still had hair. Long hair at that. That he'd love to strangle whoever was the first person to use the term heavy metal and synonymous with the style of music. So, heavy metal itself is a term. There are several sources where it could be, but the most likely one is by Burroughs to use it. So, metal.